laptop, and now it's like I'm just refiguring everything out. Yeah, if you put it in the chat, because it's here. This is what
Oh,
it's
super.
you can't see
Super.
it, but it's backwards. But
Super.
yeah, I think it would be good for you.
I just so appreciate you thinking of me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's got cartoon moves and all sorts of little things for the kids with
Oh
the,
my. Oh yeah. Oh, I recognize those little characters too. Oh, that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, so I will forward this to you. I've been waiting for the week. I'm like, I gotta get, I couldn't remember which person. And I knew it was either you or Karen. And I was like, okay, I'll wait till class so I can get it to the person. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Big hugs. Thank you.
And Maria, I would love a copy too. I put my email in the chat for you. This is Karen.
Okay.
So
yeah,
yes,
no
thank
problem.
you.
Well, good, both of you. Yay.
Me
Dana, I love
too.
this work.
You too.
Before I get up in the morning. It is amazing work, Dana.
Thank you. I think I maybe said this last week, but if I didn't, I've been really exploring a lot the idea of doing hookup standing up, because for years working with kids and elderly people, I did it mostly sitting down. But then I remembered how Dr. Dennison centers vestibular, work. And remembering that in classes, he always did hookup standing up. So I've been focusing on that more. And I think, in fact, it even says, I can't remember where I read it recently from him, that compared to Cook's hookups, which is where he took it from and how I originally learned to do hookups back 30 years ago, and it's in the original Brain Gym book this way, which, like sitting down, Cook's hookup was done sitting down like this. He moved it to this way, and I always thought about it just being easier to do and teach because you don't have to have that flexibility. But I actually believe now, I'm thinking that the whole point of this was, you cross your ankles and you are providing a bit of a challenge vestibularly, and that was really important for him to establish, to include that in the activity. I don't know how many of you in working with children have noticed, particularly in boys, the lack of vestibular development this way, the way I find it shows up. One of the ways is I find that if I'm teaching, as I oftentimes do in a gymnasium, and I normally teach standing up like in a circle, but I will have the boys will back up to the wall and lean against the wall. And I eventually, realized it was just because it was too much work for them they didn't have the balance ability. So they were supporting themselves so that they didn't have to deal with having to balance. And I heard teachers who've talked about kids actually falling off chairs.
Oh yeah.
So just coming back to that whole idea once again, the vestibular system, you know, vestibular coming from vestibule, the doorway to learning is our vestibular system. Anyway, here endeth the homily for the morning, the sermon. So actually, we're going to deal today, to start with what I call the quality of movement. So you might call it the dynamics of movement. And this is how we relate to space, time, energy, and also the flow of movement. I don't know why my camera's doing that. And it's about our, we dealt with the what of movement, and I decided to do this before we take on any more work with direction and specifically going into space. So this is about our attitude or our attention more than it is just the physically defining, you know, whether we're going up, down, sideways, forward and back, flexion, the physics, there's a flexion, extension, rotation, all those things we worked on last week. This is about how we do that. So I'll just bring up that movement chart for a moment so you can see where we are exploring today. So we went through all the what over on the left upper side here last week. Of course, the whole last, what we were working on very much in the first level that we did was the body and these movement patterns. Mm-hmm. We're moving over here to the how of the movement, the dynamics. Okay. So we're going to experience it rather than like sort of read it and talk about it. So let's start with the idea of space. So in terms of movement dynamics, this is also what in movement analysis is called effort shape work. And we're going to experience our attitude towards space. So let's everybody stand up. And I want you to just use your imaginations and imagine that you are in a beautiful park, okay? And you've arranged to meet your friend at the fountain. So I want you to all go to the fountain and notice your attitude towards space. Here, I've got my fountain over here. Just notice your attitude towards space as you go to the fountain to meet your friend. Okay, now I want you to imagine that, you know, it's a beautiful summer evening. You've had supper already. You've done your to-do list is all complete, and you're just going to the park, and you're going for a walk in the park. And there's, of course, lots of things in the park. There are beautiful trees, there are beds of flowers, there are sculptures, there's the fountain. There's all these things. Notice your attitude towards space as you walk in the park. Okay, and we'll do one more of these just to give it another context. This is fun. So imagine that you're out of toilet paper. It's become such a thing, right? And you're going to go to the shop, and or let's even say you're maybe even in the store, and you're going to get the toilet paper. So what is your attitude towards the space in that store as you go to get your toilet paper?
Oh.
Okay, now let's say you're on summer vacation and you're a tourist. You're in a new, and you're just shopping. So there are all these shops and possibilities. Who knows what you might find? So now just notice your attitude toward the spaces. And then let's come back to the screen for a moment. And you can all unmute. And so tell me, what was different about your attitude, your attention to the space? That's actually the word. What was the difference in your attention to the space in those two different experiences?
My main thing was visual, what I looked at. So, and that affected how I moved.
Okay. And how did it affect, what was the difference in your movement according to that?
How balanced I was, how, yeah, my coordination was different.
Interesting. Okay. Who else?
Dana, this is, go ahead.
When I
Okay.
was looking,
Audrey. Okay.
when you said go to the store, that look, I was much more guarded because of the COVID thing.
Okay.
Close proximity before, like the other adventures, it was more out in the open.
Okay. So for now, those are two different. That's great noticing, but just take the difference from one of those. So let's say in the park, what was the difference between going to the fountain to meet your friend and going for a walk in the evening in the park?
Well, I didn't find that there was much difference there because like my walking was fluid because it was anticipation. And so for me, there wasn't a lot of difference.
Okay.
For-
Karen, I think Karen, no, who was,
Yeah, this is Karen.
Yeah.
And mine, on that perspective, I agree. Mine was more calm whenever it was the fountain and the park. But then I noticed going into the store and to the shopping, it was a whole different feeling. Mine was more feeling of space versus movement in space. And so I guess whenever I noticed the feeling in space, then I was a little more apprehensive or more determined, depending on what the situation was.
okay, that is really interesting. So this was an unintended consequence of my choices because I forgot about the fact that, we've been in COVID for a year and a half and it's changed our attitudes, our emotional attitudes.
I'll say speed.
I was not really wanting to focus on our emotional attitudes, but it's good reminder for me. It's always there. And of course it does affect our movement. So that's a whole nother aspect of movement. That's great noticing. Okay. So anybody
Mine
know
was speed. Sorry, mine was speed.
Okay. So speed relates to what aspect of movement? Speed doesn't relate to space.
Time.
Speed
Time,
relates to
right?
time. So this is really important because a lot of people can mix those two up. And what we're doing now, what this class is going to be about is we're going to dissect those, or we're going to distinguish between those different elements so that we can then put them back together again with more understanding. That's my method here. So,
And I use the space differently. Like if I were going to see my friend, I was like, oh, my friend. And then if I was wandering around, I was looking and moving differently because at the park or when I was looking at items or something. So I was, the space that I used was very different than the bathroom one. I just like, I knew my store. I went and got my toilet paper and I was ready to leave. Cashier
Okay.
note.
So that, okay,
Space
but
was different.
so I saw a real difference just in you talking, because you're very kinesthetic and you talked with movement. So everybody else watching, did you notice, how would you describe the difference in the movement when she talked about going to meet her friend or her as she went to meet her friend versus when she was walking around enjoying the park?
Yeah, you're right. I did. I'll notice myself, but
Okay, so anybody speak up. Maria, if you want to take it away, or somebody
I'll
else.
see what other people notice. If they
Yeah.
notice.
Okay,
I share about what I experienced.
sure. Estella, go ahead.
So with the fountain, I was waiting for my friend, so then I was enjoying the fountain.
Yeah.
So my attitude was very relaxed and I was just relaxed in my movement, looking at the fountain. When I was walking, interestingly enough, I had more of a cautious walking around the park. I had the complete opposite of you, Audrey. When I was in the store, I was like, deliberate. We are going to get that toilet paper, man. I don't. Who cares who else around me? I'm on a task. And then, so my movement was more deliberate. And then in museums, looking at things, or it was not a museum in my mind. I had a museum. Then it was, I was exploring, and so my attitude in space was more of a step and pause and look, and it was more, it was deliberate. It was a different deliberate than when I was headed for the toilet paper.
For
Go ahead,
me,
Laura.
this would probably be different than each and everybody else's, but my focus was more honed with purpose toward, walking toward my friend. With the fountain, my experience was I kind of opened up and expanded, and my focus changed. And I didn't even have focus at some points because I was listening to the sounds also. So I kind of expanded around and all of a sudden I'm looking at the sunlight rays and hear the trees rustling in the wind, where I'm visually focused on a goal, getting to my friend. So my focus was less at the fountain than it was. I mean, I kind of thought, boy, good thing I'm not out here trying to get homework done or something, because this is awesome. Listening to the sounds and seeing things that I didn't have to look at, but could be distracted to, because it was beautiful. And I
Okay,
didn't have.
yeah. So, but you said something really important, Laura. And if I can, you were getting at exactly what this sense of, or this idea of attitude or attention to space is about. You said when you went to the fountain to see your friend, you didn't use the word, but similar, you had a focus.
Right.
So that sense of space we call single focus. When you were exploring the park, and Maria really showed what that was like for her, you had a multi-focus.
Oh, so that's really cool that you reframed that. It was, instead of distracting, I was multi-focusing. Okay. That makes me feel better. I
Okay,
didn't lose my attention. I just paid attention to more.
so now going back to Maria's movement, when she talked about going to her friend, how would you describe that movement that she did? She said, I was going to my friend on the fountain. So that movement was the use of space was very
There's
Direct.
directional.
direct. Perfect. See how smart you are? That is what the word we use in describing a single focus, attention to space. We say the movement is direct. Now, what would you call it when she was talking about, she was going around and she was seeing and her arms were going like this, and this was the kind of movement she was doing? What word would you use to describe that multi-focus attention to space?
Sweeping.
Interesting. Okay.
Varied or,
Well, this is a bit of a hard question. You know, kids will always tell me, will often say, not direct. And oftentimes the term indirect is used. But the other word that's used more and more, I think, and the one that I like to use is flexible.
Ah.
So it's a flexible use. So let's just get up and explore that, because you can do direct and flexible movements with any body part as well. So you can use a direct movement to raise your hand, or you might be doing a flexible movement and still end up with your in a high direction. So just explore that. And you certainly use this in martial arts, Estella.
mhm.
There are very direct movements, but there are also movements that are flexible. So think of the difference between a punch and with some of your
Circular.
different, what I'm trying to say, weapons. Yeah.
Mhm.
Jana, this is Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you for this great awareness, because I notice when I'm in environments, I need direct focus and then flexible focus to notice my surroundings for safety
Yes.
in different environments. So when you're at the mall and you go to your car, you have a direct focus to go to your car, but you need to have your flexible focus to see what your surroundings are to make sure there's nothing unexpected or dangerous. So it's kind of a calmer way of use the fight or flight.
Yes. And so what I'm hoping for us to do sort of is see how all this relates. So exactly, we can relate the way fight or flight affects our attention to space, and also the way it maybe affects our movement. So I'm also wanting us to look at this not just from the emotional sense, but the actual physical movements that we make. And then when we're dealing with somebody, that you take it the other way. The movements that they make are also reflecting their, you know, their whole mental, emotional, physical state. Am I communicating there?
Yes.
And in the wider context of a brain gym balance, not thinking, you know, necessarily even specifically of kids. Well, I'll tell it in this way. I'll tell it as a story. So, let's continue some exploration, and then I'll put it into the context of the story. Okay, so you know the whole sort of thing. So the next one we're going to deal with is time. And this is our attitude towards time. So everybody imagine, and we're going to really relate this one to, I've got a good example here because it's not so emotional. Okay, so I mean, it's not going to, so everybody stand up, and we're just going to experience different kinds of walking. So I want you to walk, imagine this is really, really hot sand, and you're going to walk on the hot sand. So how are you, what is your movement like when you're walking on the hot sand?
On my toes really fast.
Really fast, okay? Really, really quick movements. All right. Now you're walking on a beautiful mossy bank by a stream. Okay. It's all squishy, squishy. I don't know if any of you had that there. In the forest that's near me, or the tree area, there's moss. And I just love walking on that moss. It's an old forest and it's just so squishy and soft. And what's your attitude about time in your movement? What is the expression of your movement in this case?
Slow.
Slow. Okay.
Well, I'm really putting weight on my feet too, like to really feel the squishy, like my toes are all kind of,
Yeah.
that's different than time, I understand, but I'm like really,
But the result in the movement is movement that is, as Stella said, slower.
right.
Yes.
Mhm.
Also, notice the attitude towards time
Yeah,
when you're doing that attitude as you are squishing, as you are experiencing your weight, you
that enjoyment,
are using up, you're enjoying time.
yeah, like
More
it's,
relaxed.
Want it to last.
You want it to last. So we might,
The hot sand was like, hot sand was
Yeah.
fast.
it's very, it's not just fast, it's very quick, right? It's very, and we would say it's very sudden.
yeah.
When is this going to be over? When is it going to be
Yeah.
over?
Yeah, exactly.
When is it gonna be
So
over?
that attitude. Whereas when we're walking on the mossy bank, we could say we're really enjoying it, and we might use the word indulging in time. Okay, so when we're indulging in time in movement analysis, we use the word sustained, and the other pole of that is sudden or quick. So sometimes even in movement analysis, we differentiate between the attitude towards time is necessarily not necessarily just about speed, right? Because we're talking about an attitude. So a sustained movement could be fairly fast, but there is that sense of ongoing enjoyment of the movement. Sudden movement, also think of, you hear a noise and you turn your head, you react, and there's no sense of indulging in that. It's sudden. Does that make sense?
Okay, sudden, that was the other, sustained and sudden, right?
Sustained and sudden are the proper terms. Okay. So for instance, somebody mentioned, when we were talking about going to the store to get the toilet paper versus maybe, being a tourist in a museum or just shopping as a tourist, that you were quick when you went to or you were, moving. Yeah, I think you said quickly or fast, something like that, when you went to get the toilet paper versus the other one. So of course, we're using all these different qualities at the same time. There's always space, time, energy, and flow in what we do. But so we are not dissecting these because they are separate from each other, but just so we can notice the difference. So you could, for instance, have a very single focused attention to space and a very indulgent use of time, a very sustained use of time. Yes. Does that make sense? You can see that. And we're going to take these in terms of, notice some brain gym exercises and notice how these affect the brain gym exercises. And that's one that we can certainly show where we can have a very sustained direct movement in a brain gym exercise like the calf pump. Okay, so our next element of movement is energy. So everybody, let's imagine that we're cleaning the house. Okay, so come on, people, let's get up. And imagine you have a feather duster, and you're dusting off your shelves with a feather duster. And notice what kind of energy you use, you know, as you're dusting with the feather duster. Okay, now imagine you've got a really, you've got stuck on stuff on your stove, or something, you know, stuck on the floor, okay? And you're going to scrub that away. So what kind of energy do you use to scrub that stuck on stain that has been there for a while? Okay.
Better be gone by now.
Yeah. So, so tell me about those different experiences. What we're talking here about our use of force.
Yes. Yeah.
Duster's very light.
Yeah.
It might be quick,
Yeah,
but it's light.
it's light.
Okay.
Exactly. So you could
I'm trying to
also,
get a silly stain.
yeah. And what kind of force do you use when you're trying to get the stain off?
It's more powerful pressure.
Powerful, right?
Intense energy.
Yep.
Okay.
So we could use those words, and sometimes they're used light or powerful. The movement analysis terms used are strong. And originally, Laban used the word light, but a lot of people, and I in particular, use the word gentle. Because light also implies the opposite being heavy, and heaviness is a very different quality from strength. Yes?
Yeah.
It involves, we're talking about our relationship to gravity when we're talking about heavy. And the thing is that Laban started when he had to flee Germany, you know, before the Second World War, and he ended up in England, ended up getting a job, you know, analyzing movement in factories to find more efficient way of working in factories. So he was talking then about, oftentimes this involved pressure. How much pressure do you use? What is it, light pressure, or was it strong pressure? So he called this a sense of weight. But we're talking, it's just my need to explain why, you know, people use these different terms. But I find with children what works, and for me as well, is the idea of strong versus gentle energy or force. And sometimes kids come up when I ask them for words, they come up with the word powerful, and that's the same idea: powerful, strong, and then gentle, light. Some people say fine touch, delicate. That makes sense? So those three, there's also the element of throw, but let's just work with these three, because Laban said that when we have these three factors, space, time, and energy, we have a complete, when they are all combined, we have a complete effort action. So let's just look at the movement like we were talking about, scrubbing out a stain. Okay, so you could scrub that stain. You're gonna be using intense or strong energy, but your use in space could be direct, right? Or it could be indirect as you try to get that spin. Does that make sense? And
Mhm.
the sudden, it could be, very sudden movement to try to get at that stain, or it could be very sustained kind of pressure. So you see what I mean? We can combine these in different ways. And oftentimes people, they see it as one thing. So I had an experience where my partner and I would do lecture demonstrations in a school and as part of an arts residency. And we did one for a junior high in a school that was a comprehensive K to 9, grade 9. And so this was a lecture demonstration about dance. And what I would do is I would come out and I would do a dance without I just had a neutral bodysuit on, this brown neutral color I happen to have. And I would do it without any music. And they would have to look, so they had to just look at the movement. And then my partner, while I was changing into the costume to do it with the costume and the music, they would talk about the movement. And he'd start with questions about, more easy things like, what do you think the costume would be like? What do you think the music would be like? But then he starts saying, so he started introducing these concepts. So was the movements more sudden, or were they more sustained? And he might even have, because this was the first time, he might even just deal with slower. Was the movement slow or fast? Was the movement strong, or was it gentle? Was it direct or flexible? And they were just not really engaged. And so I came out and I said, Bob, we did the first one. Then I said, stop, Bob, just a minute. I'm coming out. Okay. So I got the sense that you weren't really interested in that dance that I did. So one of the dances that I did was called First Snow, and it was very slow Tai Chi movements done in silence. Actually, I didn't realize that because it was that stillness that comes from the first snow of the year, where everything gets covered up and sound it blankets the sound, and the snow is falling very slowly. And anyway, I said, well, let's look at these qualities. So we have time, we have slow and fast, I think probably used at that state. So what kind of time do you like? Fast. Do you ever like to do slow movements? Do you ever like to see slow movements? No. And this is a whole, like 90, 100 kids. Okay, let's take space. So do you like flexible movements? Or do you like direct movements? We like direct movements. Do you ever like to move in a flexible way? No. Okay. Do you like strong movements or gentle movements? Strong movements. Do you ever like to do gentle movements? No. Okay, put those three qualities together, everybody, and show me what kind of movement is that like. Well, okay. So what do you think we call that quality of movement, that combinations? Well, that was pretty easy for them to figure out. Punch, which is what we call it. In the UK, they call it thrust, but a thrusting movement. So it's strong, direct, and sudden. Strong, direct, and sudden. And you could do, it doesn't have to be like a martial art punch, strong, direct, sudden, Okay, So what does that make you feel? I asked them. Angry, they told me. I said, okay. So number one, the movements that you like, are really expression of it can be an expression of anger. And do the math for me. There are three different elements of movement we're working with, and each element has two poles. So if you combine those together, how many possibilities are there? 8. So if you only want one of those possibilities, what percentage of your movement experience are you limiting yourself to? 12.5%.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and when you think even more, well, I suppose there was a lot of rock movement. There's probably heavy metal by that time. But when you think of a lot of the popular movement now, and you think of rap,
Uh-huh.
what
Yeah.
what sense of time is there in that? Dum, 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 dum. What what is the energy of that?
Very direct.
Yeah, very direct, very sudden, very strong, right? If you equate volume with force,
Yeah, it's very loud.
yeah. So you're basically dealing with something that is continually punching.
Right.
So what would the opposite of that be?
A waltz,
Okay, yes, a waltz. Good example. And what use of space?
all over, sweeping,
Yeah, and so we call that
Flexible movement.
multi-focus
Multi-focus.
or
Flexible movement.
flexible. Flexible is the kind of the label, multi-focus is the description. So flexible. So it's flexible movement, sudden or sustained.
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 So flexible, sustained, and
And
strong,
gentle.
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 So everybody, let's come on, let's get up and let's do some flexible, sustained, gentle, light movement. And what does that feel like?
Oh.
What are you doing? How would you
Freeing,
describe that? What?
very freeing.
Freeing, okay.
it's integrating.
Integrating, okay.
I don't know. Smooth and floating.
Floating, and that is the word that is used to describe this combination, is float. Float. Okay. The opposite of that is, try the other opposite, is punch. Now, if you change one of those, if you change one of those aspects, so we've got our punch. So what if we changed that, the sense of time to sustained? It's still strong, it's still direct. What would you call that kind of movement?
Tai Chi.
Well,
I
actually,
don't know what to call this movement.
I would beg to differ,
Oh, I don't know. I don't do Tai Chi.
but can you think of what this movement, how would you describe this movement?
Slow motion.
Yeah. And if you had one word for the whole move, be a
Press.
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 Ah,
Press.
Yes,
Press.
yes. That was
Ah.
a good word. Good one.
So we call that combination slow, direct, strong, a press. Okay. And let's just keep continuing changing one, a bit easier. So now let's let's change the direct to flexible. So slow, strong, but flexible.
Would that be sweeping? No.
Steeping could be, could be.
I don't know what to call this.
I don't know. It's slow, strong.
We got the float, we got the punch, we got the.
Would it be
press.
reaching? No.
Okay, this one might be a little bit hard to think of it, but Laban used the word ring,
Ring.
because if, again, he was doing with action. So when
Oh,
you
ringing, like you're
say
ringing
ring,
something out.
it has, it
Oh,
has that rotation in it. It has to be strong and sustained.
oh, like wringing a dish towel or
Yeah.
something.
But you can
Oh.
you can ring your body.
Yes.
And in terms of expression, that can really, for instance, be a very expressive kind of movement when somebody is in grief or that kind of distress, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So these things that you're, okay, the float, punch, press, ring, they all have to do with different combinations of space, time, and energy. Is that-
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So let's continue our exploration and let's change the strength. Okay, Karen's coming back in. Let's change the strength to gentle. So we're still sustained, we're still flexible, but now it's sustained, flexible, gentle. We're back to float. We've gone all the way from punch to float there. So let's take our float and let's make our float direct. So it's light, it's sustained, and it's direct. Anybody have a word?
Sweeping.
Sweeping. That's a favorite word. Okay, and yes, sweeping could be that way. We use the word glide.
Oh, glide.
Glide.
You're cool, yeah.
Imagine a skater gliding, like not hockey, but like a figure skater gliding. Okay, and let's
Sustained,
make that
light,
glide now very, let's change the time to sudden. So it's still direct and gentle, but it's sudden.
Ow.
Remember our walking on the hot sand? That was sudden.
Uh-huh.
And that was direct and light. Yes.
Tapping.
Tapping. Perfect.
Nice job.
Or actually, the word is that Laban uses dab,
A
but it's
dab.
very
Oh.
dab, tap. It's the same kind of thing. Dabbing. Dab, 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 dab. Now let's change from that direct dabbing or tapping. Let's now make it, instead of direct, let's make it flexible. It's
We call that
quick, sudden.
overcooked spaghetti.
Okay.
Jerking.
Okay, jerking, the word we use is flick. Flick.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Thinking if you flick something right, it's a flexible move. It's indirect, and it's quick, and it's light.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think of. Okay.
So my question is, so when people, choreographers or whatever, are putting together a dance, would they then use these terms? Okay, I want you to do a glide of this direction, a float. Like, would they use these terminologies and you just know, oh, that's sustained, it's this and that as a dancer?
Dancers usually don't get. It's usually not used in that way so
Okay.
much. But it's done a lot in educational dance, like dance in education, as opposed to like dancers becoming professional dancers.
Yes. Okay.
Because that's where this sort of got infused more, where kids will explore those
Yeah. Okay.
qualities.
Okay. That
And
makes-
they might explore, two different contrasting qualities to create a dance of their own.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Dana,
Yes.
Dana, will you go through these 8? Are you done with the 8?
No, we have one more that we need.
Oh, okay. Well,
Eight.
would
I
you-
only
would
have,
you-
wait, I only have 1, 2. I have 7 written down.
Yeah. So here's the, shall we
What's
do?
the 7th? I missed the 7th.
I've got glide, float, punch, press, ring, dab, flick.
Yep. And so now what we have to do is we were just flicking, right?
Nope.
So now let's take that sudden, light, flexible movement and make it strong.
Slap.
jabbing? Punch.
We're throwing out, we're getting the idea. What words can we think of?
Estella, what would you call this? 'Cause you do this
Flinging.
flinging,
I don't know. Flinging.
but with more strength. If you do it with more strength.
Throwing.
Whacking.
Slashing. Yes, slashing. Got
Tapping.
it. Okay.
Slashing.
Slash.
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 Oh,
Slash.
slash.
Like a
Slash.
karate.
That makes sense. Slash. So you're slashing, yeah. Like a chop. But you're
Like
slashing.
somebody, like a
Yeah.
sword fighting. Right?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Slash.
Slash, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Cool.
So there's an example. There's another element here that we can add, which is the element of flow, which is how much control. So what Estella just demonstrated with her slash was that it had a lot of control in it. She stopped it at a point. So flow is about how much control there is in the movement. And one way of looking at it is, can you stop the movement? Do you have enough control to stop it? Or is it, you see this with kids, right? Can they control their movement or not? So if it's totally what we would call free flow or unbound, like a little baby who's, no control.
Yeah.
And a lot of our movement training and different things like martial arts or dance is about gaining, control of the movement. So, yeah. Helen, yes.
Before you leave those 8 things, those categories, could we go through and you give us examples of each of them? Like I got an example of everything but press and flick.
Okay, so flick could be like trying to think of, like I sometimes flick lint off my clothes.
Like if I'm splashing water on my cat to make him run away.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Yeah.
And then the cat has, would you say very sudden,
Yes.
strong, and direct? So that would be punch. The cat has the punching motion and flick him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what was the other one you wanted in
Press.
press? Okay. So, well, old fashioned.
Thinking massage therapist, maybe massage.
Oh yeah, massage. Even doing, I don't know the terms in massage, but when you're working
Kneading
in a
bread.
correct way with pressure.
Kneading bread, yeah.
Kneading bread. Yeah.
Kneading bread.
Kneading bread. I would say ironing, even in the old fashioned, when irons were heavy and when you actually pressed
Yeah.
the clothes as opposed to steamed.
Is there another word for the punch movement?
Well, the British say thrust.
Oh.
Thrust. That's what I thought.
So let's look at some brain gym exercises and see activities, and just analyze, maybe both finding some of what the intended quality is, and then how you can use your knowledge of the movement qualities to help coach somebody. Does that make sense? In the intention of the movement, or also how you could invite them to explore doing it with different qualities and what are the effects of that. So
Should we take a quick break?
oh yes,
And
of
then once we
course.
get into this,
Yes,
this seems
that's
like a
a
good
perfect timing.
point. Yeah.
It's 1 hour. So let's take how long do you need? How long do you want?
I mean, I don't need a lot, but I don't know what the other people do.
4 or 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes is fine. I did want to mention in the chat,
Question?
we
We have an
sorry.
expectant mom, and so she was here. We took her to the hospital, so she has her hospital calling here. Can you guys help repack anything for her, or do I need to call EMTs?
What do you mean?
She has a cyst that she needs.
I think Karen is talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah. I just wanted to
Sorry.
I just wanted to share this in the chat. It's a book called Integrating Primitive Reflexes Through Play and Exercise. I put it in, and it focuses on the Moro. And I just got this. And so I put it, and it's like really cool because, for example, I don't know if you can see, it gives you you can see a picture of the activity and
Yeah,
whatever.
that's great.
So I put it in the chat. There's just like all sorts of different, so I just wanted to share that. I have another one that I got from Hawkins when I was trained with her. And when I find it, that's why I'm kind of when I've had my back turned to you guys, I'm looking to try to put that in. It's a preschool, young 0 to 5 moves. But could you, Helen, did you already send us all the emails for this class?
The emails?
Of people of our,
You mean the roster?
Yeah, the roster.
I can do, I have not done that and I can. Because
Yeah,
I've
I'm
got
just-
everybody.
Yeah, because I'm
When
just
I-
wondering as we find resources, because this one, especially when there's a couple of people of us who are doing 0 to 5, like this book is, I don't know if you can get it. She brought it over from Australia, but anyway, I was just wanting where we can put some resources in and send
Mm.
them.
Maria, my emails, I'm pretty sure I've sent to you, and since you all know each other now,
Oh, okay.
and any email that came from me will have everybody's email on it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Laura, I sent in our money for CEUs. That's taken care of.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Helen and Laura, your checks arrived a couple days ago. So I just,
Oh my gosh, that took
just-
a long time, Dana. Wow.
yes, I
thank
know.
you.
Well, as I say, you know, the sled dogs have trouble in the smoke and the heat.
And in the summer.
Yeah.
Well, now I know, like with PayPal, I have a 3-day wait from it to leave the bank to go into the PayPal account to get to you. And I've always got the money in my savings checking, but I always forget to keep a stock in PayPal. So I thought the mail might reach you quicker. Well, I learned I should have just done PayPal.
Not to worry. It's okay. It's in the bank.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we'll take a little break.
So Dana, one quick question.
Yes.
Under the ring, it's under the movement, the ring, it's deep. What is the timing on that? Sudden or sustained?
Oh, the ring. Yes, it's
Yeah.
sustained.
Sustained. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, think
I-
about, I mean, and if you think about wringing out a towel, right?
Mhm.
It takes sustain. You can't just, it's not a quick movement. It
Yeah,
has
you
to
have to
be
like hold it. Okay,
continual pressure. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep. I'm just going to take a little break myself. Okay, I think we're just waiting for Laura.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just looking at my books because I have all my books behind me and I've got so many good books. I'm just checking. I did send an email for that other preschool. So Laura, check your, and Estella, check your, and Karen, check your emails.
Did you include me?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
You were number one.
Okay. So let's look at some brain gym activities and that qualities of movement. So I'd like to start with cross crawls because I think this is one where we can really apply this, especially working with children. So let's look at normal cross crawl movement. And it's once again, we put them all together in those specific 8 complete efforts actions. But of course, we don't always, I was doing them like they're all equal. And oftentimes there's one factor that's the most important, right? So we can define slash in a certain way, but maybe it's just the suddenness of the motion that's the most important thing, or maybe it's that it's very direct or whatever. So
okay, so the cross crawl would that be strong, direct, and sustained? So would that be?
So that is yes, I would say. It
So
could be
that-
strong or it could be gentle.
Okay, either way,
Depending on how you.
how you're doing it.
But we do want, it's a single focus. We want to focus on the 2 opposite quadrants of our body coming together. Or even if we're, reaching and touching, it certainly is direct. And we're looking for more sustained movement because what do we often get from kids? Kids will,
Yeah.
get silly and do this.
Yeah.
Or they may be very also, you get the ones who are having trouble with it and it will be very jerky and whatnot. So that whole idea, how direct can you make the movement of coming, a hand to the knee or the elbow to the knee coming together? Can you sustain it? I oftentimes ask kids, can they do it slow-mo? And then I get that quality. I say, can you be slow motion? And then some of them, of course, want to go like, see how they can do it slower than anybody else. So there are a lot of ways of dealing with that. But it's partly just recognizing those
Quiet,
those
he's sleeping in there.
qualities
And you
in
have
it.
to be very careful because you can hear this all the way upstairs.
So, and just to have that awareness, I mean, we're oftentimes awareness of the time, but as you look at somebody doing the movement, so what is off, what is not being realized in it? Is it the timing, or is it the use of space, or is it the amount of force being used? I mean, we learned that all with, for instance, when we were doing limb coordination in movement exploration 2, or for you, Audrey, this would be like working with the amount of effort used to do arm activation. So in movement explorations, we do combinations of limb coordination. And the whole idea, Carol Ann puts it in her words that she uses are, what can you release? Can you use only the amount of energy necessary? But it's to develop that in those kinds of movements, like the arm activation and movement coordination. We're looking for a very gentle energy. We're looking for using the least amount of force necessary. Okay, and let's take a look at lazy 8s. So immediately, what's different about this movement?
It's gentle,
Yeah,
sustained,
Mhm.
yes,
and flexible.
exactly. Excellent, Helen. And so that is already different from your cross crawl because it has this flexible use of space.
Mhm.
And also we always want, especially when we're doing 8s for eyes, we want that sustained quality because we're looking not for jerks, right?
Yeah.
So we want sustained movement quality. And for some children, sustained may be difficult. So when you see that, then you can start thinking about giving them movement activities or stressing in the brain gym that they do that particular quality. So this child has a problem dealing with sustained time. So how can we make experiences that use sustained time? That's just where I'm going with this.
So you think, if I think of a student who has ADHD with the H, the hyperactivity, who is like, well, we know the time is off. So what, maybe working on some activities that would be more sustained with that.
Yeah, exactly.
maybe?
Exactly. And think of it too in terms of focus. I mean, partly my understanding with ADHD, and I haven't had training in this specifically, is I would say also they have kind of a multi-focus.
Oh, yeah.
They have a problem with direct focus.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So that's another thing that could be stressed with the brain gym activities or other activities you do, finding that direct focus. And one of the things I'm leading up to here is we're going to be looking, and I don't know if we'll get to this today, at Anne Green Gilbert's brain dance. So this is her brain dance is basically, it's like her version of PACE, but what it is it's using it's doing movements for each of the movement patterns, minus mouthing.
I might be aware of that because with my, yeah. And who
Yeah.
was it again? What's her name?
Anne Green Gilbert.
Anne Green Gilbert.
Yeah. So it's like brain compatible dance
Yeah.
stuff. She's wonderful. Her work is wonderful. But I'm leading up to inviting each of you to develop your own little brain dance of whatever. So it would be a warm up or a little ritual activity to do that uses all 6 fundamental movement patterns. And as we do those, being aware of the quality of the movement as you do it. Does that make sense? So it's bringing that extra element or consciousness into the movement activities that we do as people. So right now, because I really want to stick with this a little bit and have you all explore it. So I'd like you to each suggest a brain gym movement activity for us to do together and analyze either the way we can experiment with the quality of movement or the quality of movements that we're looking for. Audrey, you look like you have one. Yeah.
The calf pump.
Okay. The calf pump. So let's everybody do it so we can experience it. So what, if you were going to go with one of the 8 complete effort actions, which one would you say that you would call this?
I'd say press.
Exactly. So that was the one that for Helen, you wanted an example of this. And so here's another example, is the calf pump. Sustained, direct, strong. When you think of doing it with sustained, direct, strong qualities, does that change in any the way you are doing the calf pump right now from how you've maybe done it in the past? I'm just curious.
It does for me because it's like there's more flow and well, you think of the directness, so you're concentrating on that stretch being more complete. Anyway, this is all very interesting.
Great. Okay, so who's next with a different brain gym exercise for us to do?
What would you do with any of the buttons? Because wouldn't all the buttons be together?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so and some of them we have moved. I mean, you know, like we oftentimes the balance buttons we just hold. So think about this movement. What would you? How would you describe? Because oftentimes people, you know, you get little kids who are, you know, it hurts. Well, you know, so let's try some gentle energy.
Sustain.
Sustained.
And direct.
Yeah. Yeah. So sustain.
Okay, so that is gliding.
Yeah. So it could be a gliding movement of the fingers. You know, it's a very small gliding movement of the fingers. But again, we don't, and this is, you know, we don't want sudden movement, right? Because we don't want this to be a jerky kind of thing.
Right.
So developing that sustain, and the sustainedness of it also gives us the chance to start noticing, right? Because it's very powerful when you do brain buttons and even stop the movement of the fingers and notice as you're breathing the change in your posture as you're doing brain buttons. So I really slow it down when I do it now. to really allow me to notice, because you are finding your midline. And to me, working in my Monday night class, I've mostly now had a couple of 80-year-old women who are really struggling with balance. And this can be a powerful exercise for or activity for balance. I mean, I know we have balance buttons, but also I'm finding doing brain buttons with this really taking the time, doing it with eyes closed as well. And noticing if with eyes closed, if you move your eyes to track them, does that throw off your balance? Or does it affect, what I should say, does it affect your balance? That was bad languaging on my part.
Laura? Laura lost audio.
Oh dear.
No. She might come in and out. We have to watch for her.
Okay.
Let her back in.
Go away.
Okay, I'll watch.
Dana, one question, can this be flexible, this particular one flexible as well as direct?
Yeah, I suppose you could say, because on a micro level, you know, it could be, yeah, it could be flexible. But here's the thing, this is where also we don't necessarily have to have, welcome back. We're not necessarily always dealing with all three as the polarities.
Right.
So in some cases, you know, the force could be moderate force. It couldn't be neither really gentle nor really strong, right?
Mhm.
The same way space is a little bit different. We just might not, in a particular movement, we might not be particularly conscious of our attitude or our attention in space, right? And in terms of the timing, of course, there's a continuum from quick to more sustained.
Let's do hookups. And I'm gonna guess that's float.
Oh. So first of all, I will just say, and this is maybe a bit of a cop-out on my part, that hookups is actually a position, a shape. It's not a movement.
Oh.
So what we've just worked applies to movements, okay?
Okay.
But that reminds me, that's another thing I wanted to deal with is shape. So we may get to shape a little bit and how that affects.
That
Yeah.
also reminds me of ring.
Oh, very good. So yes, because we are, you know, we were rotating our limbs. So it is a ringing movement to get into that.
Ah.
And gravity glider too is another ringing movement. Feels like to me anyway.
Okay. So it's interesting when you do gravity glider, for instance, let's do gravity glider, everybody.
The owl.
Whether you want to do it. Okay, just hold on here. Just yeah. Gravity glider. Let's do gravity glider. Come back up. Okay, so everybody, let's glide. Interesting, the word glide. Let's think of gliding down. So direct, sustained, and light. And glide back up. Okay, but we could also do this as a press,
Gliding,
right?
it says a word.
And some people, what? Try doing it as a
No, go
press.
ahead.
What does that do to your body if you think of pressing down?
Oh, feel
Oh, I tighten up.
completely
Yeah.
different.
Exactly. Very different.
So when I
Okay.
did gravity gliders, I've always done it sitting,
Yeah.
but I don't think I did it just coming down gently. I kind of was whooshing down to my toes and up.
So you were taking a flexible pathway. It was not a direct pathway. It was more
Right, because you're,
yeah.
I just feel like
So-
every time my legs are crossed over or my arms are crossed over, there's a ringing in my
Yeah.
legs.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel.
So that would be another way we could play with brain gym activities, especially with children if they get bored, is to invite them to try it in different ways. So you could do this more flexible entry into it as a variation, as opposed to thinking of gravity glider as whether you're doing it in a chair or standing, as a simple folding
okay.
of the whole, which is the way I teach it. Or can it be more of a flexible thing where you're allowing the spine to just adjust into that position? That's interesting.
I may have been doing it wrong all these years. Not wrong differently, not wrong, just the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things. In some cases, the brain gym exercise activities are not clearly defined. There are some of them and some elements of them that are not. Like the buttons are very clear. They're acupressure points and we know where they are and all that. Okay.
Foot flex.
Yes? Ellen?
Well, okay, does anybody think of a sudden brain gym exercise?
I didn't.
They all seem to be very sustained, no?
On the whole. Oh, I was thinking about that earlier. What did I?
I mean, some of them are strong, some of them are gentle, some of them are direct, some of them are flexible.
Mhm. But sudden, you're right. What's sudden? I've got my book here too, so I'm kind of looking at the pictures.
Unless you do the cross crawl sudden with sudden movement. I don't know.
Yeah, the cross crawl could be done with sudden movement.
Just a play. Right.
And actually that might be useful. Once you've got the coordination of cross crawl, can you hit it? Can you get there?
You could do cross crawl sit-ups with sudden movement.
What was that? Cross crawl sit-ups with sudden movement? Uh-huh.
Mhm. Could you say the foot flex could be a pressing or a ringing?
So because it is actually, we're working with creating a length in the muscles. For me, it's a direct movement, but it's actually, I also always teach if I have my skeleton here, and even when I don't, I try to show it on my body that the heel makes this excursion around the joint. And that's the actual movement action. The result is a lengthening in the muscle, which means the muscle is lengthening or stretching. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. So this movement, although you know, when you look at it from the side like this, it's a circular kind of movement. It creates an arc.
Mhm.
But I would say the nature of that is direct. I don't know. That's really interesting question, because I guess you could also say it's multi-focus in that the focus changes. When
Well,
you
I
look
thought
at
the focus was on the
when you-
hand, the fingers that were massaging the calf. No, I guess not. I have it wrong.
you know, the toes make kind of a direct, you know, you think of the toes coming towards the knee. But I like to emphasize the fact that this movement is actually creating an arc.
Mhm.
Somehow that's different to me than people think of, because your body's three-dimensional, right? As opposed to thinking of like folding a piece of paper that the ankle is doing this.
Mhm. It can rotate too.
It's rotating.
It's rotating. Hey,
Yeah.
can I come back to the cross crawl, Dana?
Yes.
When we were talking about, this is a teaching point for the whole group because you're all teachers. And I understood that with the speed of the movement, you could do fast or slow, right? So I got that part on a level, but on a different kind of level, why is it that I'm remembering from some of the workshops we're always supposed to teach the movement slow? Because then my brain went into what neurosynapses are you building? And if we do it too fast or too jerky, are we creating any, if we were to use the sudden movement in cross crawl, what is that doing holistically? When would you use it sudden? When would you use it fast? Why am I remembering from other workshops always do it slow? You know, so my brain kind of went a little wacky. I agree that the movement with the cross crawl, you can do it sudden or sustained. But when you get into all the levels, I've got so many teachers on here and my brain went wacky. I just thought, maybe could we discuss that a little bit? Because I got kind of, oh, how do I apply this?
So my suggestion was that, yes, in teaching cross crawls, it's first important to teach it with sustained movement.
Yes.
Because you're dealing with the balance. I mean, it's very complex, right? You're dealing with balance, you're dealing with you know, a new integration of movement, all that sort of stuff. But what I was mentioning is once we get to that point where the cross crawl's available to them, then we can start expanding our movement abilities. It's like what it's why I told that story about the junior high class.
Okay.
So I didn't think of stating what to me was the next sort of corollary, which is for all of us, we have movement preferences. And when we only use our movement preferences, we are limiting our experience of movement. We're limiting our what we have available to express ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
It's just
You're
like, and
only-
we do this.
You're just
Reinforcing.
reinforcing certain
Yeah.
connections. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we do know the same thing in brain gym, that are, and when we're checking out the dimensions, that if our balance isn't centered, then we have a preference for always being over focused, and that limits our choice in life if we're always, for instance, over focused.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So the same thing happens here. And that was one thing that I hoped you picked up on. Actually, you used the words, Laura.
Yeah.
The whole idea that when we're looking from the movement analysis, our attention to space, I'm trying to get myself to remember to use that word, our attention to space. Well, what do we say the focus dimension is about? Our attention, it's about our ability to attend. And how do we see it in our body? You know, whether we're over focused or under focused. And it's all so related. So our attention to space can be single focused or multi-focused. What do we do in in-depth brain gym, where we check to see if we can maintain focus and still put it into a context. Can we maintain focus and still be aware of the space around us? I mean, I do that. I've always done that with people. So pick something to focus on. And as you focus on that one thing, can you maintain your focus there, but also be aware of the whole space? And for me, this has been how I've dealt with Zoom and in COVID, is that I always remember as I'm looking at the screen, I'm constantly also giving myself that I'm in this room that's full of paintings, that's some sculptures, I got windows, there's light coming in. I'm not just blocking everything else out to focus on the screen.
Well, it's just like when you're teaching, or Estelle, Estella's doing her classes. I mean, when I think of when I'm in the classroom, yeah, I'm teaching that small group, but I'm maintaining knowing everything that's going around.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same concept of you're focused, but you're also focused in the
And you can see that in the movement of the people you're working with too.
Dana, if I could just add something.
Yeah.
I know we're talking mostly about children, but the cross crawl, when I've worked 2 or 3 times with people post-stroke, and the cross crawl is just magnificent to work with them. Like, and they, I say, or they say, left hand touching right knee, right hand touching left knee, and very slow, of course. And they often have to take their left hand to touch the right knee.
Yeah.
But very interesting results because of that, getting that connection done. But that's in a very slow motion.
And that's where I also oftentimes do the ipsilateral or homolateral crawls as well. And I also do homologous movement with them a lot. I mean, I happen to work specifically with stroke people, but groups of older people, many of whom had a stroke. Anyway.
It's amazing. The difference.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a choice. There are 2 possibilities at this point. One is we would have time to just go through like a brain dance warm up, which would include some of these, we can notice the qualities of movement as we do it. Or I also had notes from last time. There was a question from Laura about being able to push off in terms of jumping. And also we didn't get to do the crawling and the creeping. So we can, are you interested in doing, this is basically sort of working with homologous, homolateral, and cross-lateral patterning in ways that we haven't done so far? Or do you want to do the brain dance?
So the brain dance, okay, I'm looking at the time right now.
Yeah.
Do you think we should, since you said like the brain dance is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, opening or beginning, like you could do it at the beginning of a class type thing, maybe doing that as our first thing next week as our opening?
Oh, okay.
Versus, I don't know. I'd love to see the jumping and hopping and maybe finish up from last week only to get those things solidified and then start with the brain dance.
Is everybody okay with that? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, so let's do that. So we will start let's do it in the order of the pattern. So we'll do the jumping first and then we'll lie on the floor and crawl. Okay, so the way I start this is by doing plies, is what we used to call them. My sister calls them creasings now, to not use what she says is can be considered colonial languaging. So I just had to throw that in because it drives me crazy.
Yeah, when you said that last week, I'm like, colonial language, okay, we're getting real PC here.
Yeah, exactly. Having done plies for 50 years, somehow turning them into creasings just drives me crazy. So we work with this, you know, the whole idea of the plumb line through the center, the tailbone dropping between the feet as we do the creasings. Okay. And one of the ways I will start with this is we'll go, you know, bend and stretch and bend and stretch and press on your feet to rise and lower back down. So it's the whole idea that in order to go up, what do we have to do? Where does our energy have to go? In order to go up, well, yes, our head floats up, but what else has to happen in the body?
It needs to go down to get the up.
The energy has to, we have to press, we have to use that sustained, direct, strong energy pressing into our feet in order to rise. It's the whole idea is that because of gravity, where's my thing? For each and every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, yes, by thinking of going up from the top of our heads, we will lengthen in the spine and that will help us to go up. But at the same time, we can't just detach ourselves from the ground, right? The other part of that is the fact that we have to be pushing down into the ground in order to rise, okay?
Right.
And I oftentimes, there's another way I can show you to teach this. Okay, everybody sit down on the ground. I didn't choose to do this because this can be a little bit hard on your knees. So if it is, don't, but I do a lot with crossing the legs like this. And then we sneak the leg out. And we do call it a snail spin around on the floor. So we cross our foot across our knee, and then we sneak our knee out, like a snail coming out of its shell. And then we cross the foot over, and we sneak the leg out.
Oh, I can't do that.
Okay.
Let's see it again, Dana.
You could
Okay.
have your hip flexors maybe tight.
Yeah, so you cross
Yeah,
your foot over your
cross.
knee.
All right.
And you sneak the knee out. You have to
Okay, got it.
anchor this foot on the floor and slide the foot out. The knee out, sorry.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Now I do a whole thing and we do spins on the floor and stuff like that. I can't show it on this carpeted floor, but we'll do that and then we'll use this leg to whip ourselves around and do a butt spin. But the other thing I teach is I ask the kids to stand up from that position.
Oh, boy.
But I say, like, for some of you, like this is even hard on my knees, but I know what I'm doing, so I can work really hard. But the point is, I was to this whole thing. Yes, one can think up with your head, but if you just think up with your head, are you actually going to get up?
No.
In order to get up, you have to press down with your legs.
Oh.
Well, I have to use my hands because my hips.
You have to, yeah. So I'm not, but I'm just showing you for working with kids. It's how to, I mean, this is physics, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, I teach them to do this cool thing they like, where they turn, up and they twist themselves down. So it's more rotation. they twist themselves up, but to twist themselves up, for many kids, that just getting that sense of you're going to come up by pressing down to come up.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's the same thing here with the plies. To come up and rise on our toes, we press down into our feet. And when we press down into our feet,
Yeah.
here I am. I'm on balance. Right? And
Right.
that's all because I'm pressing down through my feet to get there. Okay, and it doesn't take me tensing up my legs. I don't have to grip my butt muscles together like teachers tell people time. It's all that I keep the length through the top of my spine and I'm pressing down through my feet. So I really work with the kids doing this. It's basic flexion extension through the legs. And it's the action of jumping in slow motion. So this is where I was going with you, Laura. This is how you build up the ability to get off the ground.
Get off the ground.
Yeah. So the next step is we do a bounce, 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 stretch, a bounce, 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 stretch, up onto your toes, a bounce, 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 stretch, a bounce, 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 stretch, and then jump, 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 jump.
Do it again, please.
Okay. So a bounce, 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 press, a bounce, 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 press. I'm going all the way up, a bounce, 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 press, and a jump, 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 jump. A 1, 2, press, a 1, 2, 3, 4, press, a 1, 2, 3, 4, press, and jump, 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 jump.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, so the jumping, yes, you need the reach through the top of the head that we worked on in Carol Ann's class. At the same time, you need the push through the feet.
Yeah.
And the two of them, if you have one without the other, it's hard, right? If you just jump by pushing from your feet, that's really hard work. And at the same time, if you don't push through the feet, and I see that in a lot of kids, they don't have that connection. That's the connection from pushing themselves out of the womb, in birth. It's the first time you use that.
So like you might see a lot more problems with C-section babies is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I can look at a preschool kid running across the floor toward me and think, I bet that's a C-section baby. You just see the lack of that integration.
So now I'm just making a joke about myself. So just bear with me. I know that I need to lose 25 pounds because I put 10 on with COVID and I've been sedentary with remote work. And so, the knees are hurting more, the back is hurting more. I need to do some work there. But regarding the twist on the floor, Dana, if you're finding that you have muscle weakness in what's the top muscle? I'm forgetting. I'm just freezing. The top muscle on the quad. Is it the quads?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I have muscle weakness in my quads and I'm noticing coordination issues, is there some small step when you're going to press up off the floor to get up? If you're finding yourself getting stuck, is there something else to add there to strengthen those?
Okay. So what I would suggest doing is building up. To me, the important thing is that homologous movement pattern.
Okay.
And a great one for that is if you have wooden floors,
Yes.
is you do the old push from the wall.
Okay.
So you get your bum, and I do this with kids, and if there are more than one, it's like, it's not a race,
Yes.
but see who can push themselves the farthest. But this is a little weird because it's a door frame here and I can't slide, but it's
Yeah.
like 1, 2, 3, and you push yourself. Sometimes you can put like a blanket or a towel underneath so that they can make the sliding easier. But you
Okay.
can do that for yourself to get that push with both legs and the push equal from both legs to really get that movement pattern there. That's
Okay.
why I hurt my knees, was because I didn't have that. I think that's my feeling. Why my knees got injured dancing on concrete was because I didn't have that pattern strong enough.
That pattern. That's a great step for me. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time with that.
Yeah.
So Dana, if I can expand on that, is there, like the last one you talked about, there was a piece with the womb. Is there another part of initial development that this may be a challenge from?
You mean like homologous movement not being fully integrated? Is that what
Possibly.
you're asking?
Yeah, I think so. Mhm. Or
Well,
is that more
my
after?
point is just it can be start from the birth process not being, for instance, I think I was a forceps delivery because of when and where I was born. I never asked my mother. I didn't know about this before she died. So, if the baby is pulled out, if the baby is C-section, if the baby doesn't have to do all that work that initiates some of the reflexes in the birth process.
Yeah.
So there are quite a few
Maybe even-
reflexes that are initiated in that process. Yeah.
Maybe even smaller babies premature that just slide on out because they're small
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Helen.
Well, coming from a nursing background, generally forceps is because the head is not coming down and out. And in that final thing, the head needs to rotate. So my thinking with that, I've never thought about this before, but my thinking with that, Dana, would be any primitive reflex that has to do with head rotation could be a
Oh.
real issue.
Uh-huh.
That's interesting.
You follow? Because the head
Yeah.
has to press on the pelvis of the mom and rotate from here to here,
Right.
from side to down, and then come up. And what happens is that the pelvis of the mom doesn't open up enough for the head to come down. And then that's when they do the forceps.
I see.
And you got low forceps and you got high forceps.
Okay.
But either one is going to be head rotation
Mm.
involvement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering too, on that note, when they, with my mom, they just, you come to the hospital, they put you to sleep and then they give you the baby. How do that,
The
mom-
anesthesia.
the
Well,
mom's
the-
asleep and
okay.
does the baby still be pushing it? I mean, the mother's
Yes.
not pushing because she's asleep.
The uterus does it. The uterus takes over and pushes the baby out.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I was in OB in that transition from no general anesthetic to from general anesthetic to no general anesthetic. Yeah, and we didn't. It would be interesting to know the statistics of forceps with anesthesia and without, but it was not a big thing to do low forceps. We did everything we could not to do a C-section. Everything we
Everything you
could.
could.
And you didn't want to do high forceps because it could cause brain damage because you were putting too much pressure on the
Pushing
skull.
head.
But low forceps was not a big thing. We were just assisting the mom.
Helen, what's low forceps? Where were they placed? Like at the chin
Oh,
level?
the placement on the skull is whatever position the head is in, where it's stuck. It could be in any position,
Yes.
but the forceps are made to go around the head. They don't vary. They're
Yeah.
they're just like that.
Okay.
And they go in and they grab a hold of the head on both sides, and then it's pulled out
So
with a
the low,
contraction.
So to prevent the brain damage, the low forceps would include around the jawline too?
No,
or
it's more here.
more up at the head? Okay, so
Well,
where would the
My
high
memory
forceps?
is it's here.
Okay.
You're hitting, you're trying to get the temple. But it could be anything, because your head, the head position and coming down the birth canal could be in any position. So they're just grabbing what they don't, they may not know what part of the head is being, where it's turned for sure. I mean, you're looking at over 50 years ago, before they had the ability to do ultrasounds and all the stuff they've got now to tell them what's going on. They just got a stuck baby and they got to get it out.
Yeah.
You're on a time frame.
Can I ask another further question on this rotation piece? So how does then rotation affect, it affects all kinds of areas in with the baby to be able to look perspective up and down, twist and turn, is that right?
You know,
To see
Karen,
what's
I just
around
want,
them and all kinds of things?
I want the other professionals to comment, but one along with you, like one of my questions with that is, I bet that affects reading and writing ability in school.
I would agree. It gave me goosebumps on that one, girl.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is too, is that my understanding is that as the baby, through the experience of birth and the twisting that they have to do, that there are reflexes that are already active in preparation for birth, but actually the traveling through the birth canal also stimulates some other reflexes. For instance, the spinal galant reflex is involved, and that, for instance, the spinal galant switches on, according to Svetlana, no, can't remember if this was Svetlana Mozgotova or Renata Venegas.
Mhm.
That switches on the baby's elimination functions,
Mhm.
which
Interesting.
have been unactive through, you
Mhm.
know, in the normal way, so
Correct.
that reflex helps to switch on. And Svetlana Mozgotova says if somebody is wets the bed, that you need to what did she call it? Repattern the spinal galant. You need to
Mhm.
repattern the spinal galant. And I remember in the class, somebody said, well, what about in geriatric cases? She said, what is geriatrics? She said, old people. Of course it will. If old people are having trouble with that, she said, repattern the spinal galant, and it's most likely that it will bring back the function. So I don't know, but I thought that was really pretty cool.
I should have my friend, she just talked to me about thinking of looking into surgery because she has with the urine issues. She's only 38. I'm like, maybe I need to get my spinal galant and give her some things to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got Kegel to death, forget it. Huh.
What did you just say?
I said, she told me I've been Kegeling to death and I
Oh,
said,
okay.
"No, not helping.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certain
I'll do
time.
that. I'll
Okay.
write a note.
Okay.
Okay.
Crawling. Yes, Helen.
Well, it reminds me of in Carol Ann's class, the clackles,
Mm-hmm.
because that all, technically that is all elimination. So doing clackles too, Maria.
Oh, clackles, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'll look into that. Thank you.
It's all interesting. So we don't have a lot of time, so I'll show you this and maybe you can play with it. So what I love about this is showing how our hand to mouth reflex and our ATNR set up crawling. This is from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. So you all know, can you see me well enough on the floor? And feel free to tell me a different adjective. So here we have hand to mouth, right? And hand to mouth. So eventually, what happens is, and I'll see if I can, it's really hard for me to slide on here, right? You start by sliding backwards, and this comes from the hand, the pressure of the hand on the floor, and it's not going to work for me, but I'll. So I go to the other hand to mouth, and then the head turns, the hand pushes, and you go the other way. The head turns, automatically that's gonna elicit that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Head turns means you have to go to the other hand to mouth, but it allows, it is that movement to push ourselves back, which is the first one. Then, I wish I had a floor, because this is actually, I hope you have the space to do this and try it, because it actually feels really great. If you just start by practicing shifting from hand to mouth, and then add the push back, it's quite a satisfying experience. So here I am, hand to mouth, and I want to go forward now. So I see, I want to move forward. And that ATNR means this is going to happen. Yes. And I end up with the other hand to mouth. And then I look and I see something, and the ATNR comes into action. And now I'm pushing with my foot. Yeah. So I just love that, the elegance of that, how those two reflexes, of course, the ATNR practiced on the back, and the hand to mouth practiced on the tummy, and then how they combine to create that movement for crawling. So it really is a clear example of how the reflexes are the building blocks of the movement patterns. So those two reflexes combine crawling, which is homologous movement on the belly. And those two reflexes, practice on the back and on the tummy by babies, set up the whole coordination of the limbs that then can be used to locomote across the floor in a horizontal, in this case, in the horizontal level. And they're going through the whole evolution of, through lizards, crocodiles, whatever. Is that clear to everybody? But I really, wish we were together in a space and we could all be doing this. So I hope, you find some space where you can actually try this and feel it, because it also is a great integrating thing. Like for a while, I had the use of a community hall, and I literally went there and would spend time just crawling backwards and forwards on the floor. And getting that, getting it much more integrated in my body. Okay, so then I think Caroline, it was clear from this in her class, but how then when you come up to all fours, the reaching, you counterbalance, and that's why it's cross-lateral, because if you were to reach this way and try to balance on one hand, you'd fall over. There's no stability. So it builds, it's an automatic reaction. You're going to catch yourself with the opposite knee because it's the only stable pattern, but that sets up that contralateral stable pattern for walking. Because once again, this is a very inefficient way to walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my little demo
Some of
of
those
it.
people are doing it who have their pants down there, way down their legs,
Yes.
can't walk, and they're doing
Yes,
almost
I
what you
know.
just showed us.
Yeah.
That's And you're like, pull them up so you can walk properly.
And here's another, while we're on walking, so this is kind of back to my original brain body fitness class, where I teach the importance of keeping the feet pointing straight forward. And, you know, we've looked at all these joints like roller, ball joint that rotates. But if you want to move forward, the lower two joints all move in this direction. So if you want to move forward, having the feet turned out, that's like ready to move on the diagonal. So this is a very inefficient way to move forward because our joints are bending that way. You know what I'm saying? It's just physics. It just doesn't make sense. And then what do we have? People end up with knee problems, with ankle problems, because they haven't mastered this. We're so hung up about this part of our body, right? Irmgard Bartanieff, who was one of the first people who explored the fundamental movement patterns, called this the 7 dead inches of the Western body. Because this is where so much of our possibilities for flexible movement comes from.
So if you have someone, so my son-in-law, oh my gosh, it's like really, really like this when he walks.
Mm-hmm.
What could I suggest? What do you suggest to help?
Okay, first is, do you know rhythmic movement training?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so windshield wipers,
Okay.
lots of windshield wipers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the qualities of movement are really important too, right? Not so much with this, but especially with the passive movements, you know, the quality, the amount of force, the timing. That rhythmic movement training is all about, when we say rhythm, it's all about the way you're combining the force, the space, and the timing to create that sense of rocking in the body, which is a impetus and a release, an impetus and a release. There's a sustained force, right? For the pulling, for instance, from the heels. And then there's a release. So the release, you let go of the control. With the pulling movement, or when you're doing pushing, it's a sustained push. It's not a jerk. So it's not sudden
Right.
movement, right? And it's gentle,
Mhm.
sustained, and direct. It's very direct. So all of those, as a practitioner in this, you know, it's very important to have a sense of those qualities. Anyway, back to your nephew,
My son-in-law, yeah.
son-in-law. Okay, so windshield wipers are very important. It's why you notice I did windshield wipers always in that morning warm-up that I did with the
Yeah.
kid. Now there's an ego skew exercise that I used to find helpful, which is putting a pillow between your knees.
Mhm.
And one of the problems is that men tend to have stronger outward rotators than inward rotators. So I found that helpful for myself. It's just the squeezing. And then again, it's as you're doing it, it's trying to isolate just the muscles that are needed to pull the knees together. Now that's not rotation per se, but I think it's really good for men because it's helps to balance the muscles. The outside of the leg versus the inside of the leg. So those are the two ones that I do for that. And if
So
you can do
Dana,
if you can do hands-on with him, I would, you know, I would really make sure that there's that he's becomes aware that the whole leg is controlled from up here, that's where the rotation comes from.
So with those, I'm pointing to you with the outer muscles, that may be pulling the feet outward then? Is that versus the inner that are looser or not as strong?
Yeah, and it's not just like the fascia lata. There are very small muscles inside that are also doing the rotation.
Okay.
Here's another thing. Guys, a lot of guys, I don't know, it would be interesting to notice his stance. Because if he's just standing, does he stand like this? Or does he stand like this? Well, I mean, the feet would be rotated out, apparently, in his case.
I'll have
But
to look, I'm not
does he
sure.
keep his feet wider?
Okay, I don't know, I can't remember.
So that locks the pelvis.
So if feet are wider, pelvis are locked?
The pelvis is probably locked. And then you see,
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things too is to, besides windshield wipers, is to start getting him to, I mean, show him where his hip sockets are. You know, I always teach the thing. Okay, so two ways of doing it. One is find your greater trochanters, come in half the way to the center of your body. That's where a little bit higher than the greater trochanters, but you know, that's where your hip sockets are. So to find that position, put your feet under your hip sockets with your feet pointing straight forward.
Terrible.
Okay. And then doing things like brain buttons, balance buttons with the eyes closed to get the body to start organizing itself in that alignment. Yeah, I have a feeling that Margie Citron said something like this. This can be an indication that somebody has a fairly active fear paralysis reflex.
Oh, yes,
This
he
is-
does, he does,
Yeah.
yes. Yep,
So it's locking yourself, making yourself very stable, but it's very inefficient way to move, right?
oh,
Because
yeah.
you're way off the center of your balance. So
Yeah.
it's starting to be able to bring yourself in. And so that may be some, you know, I don't know if you can do balances with him to help support him feeling more
Yeah,
secure.
it's painful to watch him walk for me, to see
Mhm.
him. So, I'm just like, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. I've got a whole bunch of thank you.
So like polyvagal nurturing also might be helpful for him to start to be able to
Polyvagal nurturing.
polyvagal
Yeah.
nurturing.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are again.
Well, thanks for taking the time. Hopefully it helps someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very helpful, very helpful.
Absolutely. Okay, so next week we will work with the brain dance ideas.
Yeah.
And we'll work with directions
Sure.
in space.
Nice. Yay.
Hey, take care.
Thank you. And
Have a
then let
great
me know
week.
if you
Thanks, Dana.
did not get that email from me.
Okay, everybody,
Thank you. Have a great week.
Thank you, everybody.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dana.